To the extent that you could say it was about anything, I think rock and roll was about rebellion. As such, by its nature, it was often a contrary expression against something, a protest. In its positive form, it would be about freedom. Sexual freedom, of course, but political and economic too, against restraint of any kind, and therefore, in its most extreme, espousing rather foolish, mindless, and Pollyanna beliefs. Countless examples could be supplied. I won't name a single one. But if you know any songs from the rock and roll category, run over a short list in your mind, and I believe you will agree mostly with what I've said. Rock and roll fit perfectly into its times and culture and prevailing events. The 1960s, the baby boomers swarming into their teenage years and into those post-adolescent nursing homes we call college, the civil rights movement, and the Vietnam War. The war especially put a shot of urgency and anger and polarization into the rebellion, giving it a huge, specific, immediate focus. Watergate was a kind of culmination to the revolution, but I also think it signaled the end of rock and roll. The music was energy, and the wave had to crash. Years later, Patti Smith found the music she was hearing embarrassing and tepid. She rejuvenated it, coarsened it, put the frantic, antic measure back in the beat. I understood that, even if I did not exactly enjoy it. What to do with a spent tradition? There were some successful spin-offs, like the theatrical glam rock of David Bowie and Freddie Mercury. They had an almost insanely devoted following. I guess you could also toss Elton John into that glittering mix. Again, I somewhat understood it, but I viewed it as a performance curiosity, not a simple pleasure. And there was punk, epitomized by someone named, naturally, Johnny Rotten, playing with the Sex Pistols. They took rebellion and pushed it, as it had to be pushed, into despairing just about everything. And I think somewhere along the line there was, for want of a better name, post-punk that turned into grunge, the grunge bands led by Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. You can go on the internet and select from several live performances of Smells Like Teen Spirit. I did, and it scared the hell out of me. Seeing that, the surprise isn't that Cobain killed himself, the wonder is that he lasted as long as he did. Grunge was a leap out into the wilderness. The main morph of rock was into metal, and then inevitably heavy metal. This is where rebellion turned into a crushing, punishing force. When I think about heavy metal music, which I rarely do, I think about the scenes from the future in the first Terminator movie. Those flying machines bent on destroying any living thing in their path. People reduced to crawling around in the debris of their world that the machines have destroyed. I think it's true that rock and roll music began with Negroes, as they were then called, and their music was lifted by white performers who made all the money by playing its exuberant sound. So it's not surprising, I don't think, that the Negroes' descendants, young black males living in, say, Compton, calling themselves niggas, would come up with something new, which was rap music. And it was very vulgar, as it had to be, and very violent, as it had to be, and very opposing to authority, which would be the whites and cops, as it had to be, and scandalous in its treatment of women, as it had to be. It's easy to see the necessity of it all, in order for it to be real. But it's also a little scary to observe the advance of music, always in opposition, constantly in search of freedom, whatever that might mean at the time. When rap and hip-hop outlive their motive force, as they have already done, I do wonder what furious new beast will rise up to replace it. Music is the piper calls the tune. Rock and roll was rebellion, producing a counterculture and a protest movement. Rap was combative, insisting on resistance, confrontation, violence, and death. So, yeah, what's the next big beat? And what will its marching orders be?